Hey, is there the one and only, sharing the moment I lived through and the story I have learned from others. For a long time, I thought communication was about clarity, say the right words, explain things properly, make sure people understand. Simple. But over the years, I realized something uncomfortable. Most communication problems does not come from missing information. They come from missing connection. This episode is about that. Not theory, not techniques, just moments where I thought I was clear, but something still went wrong. I have always believed that if I explain something properly, people would understand. I put effort into choosing words. I structure my thoughts. I avoid ambiguity. So when misunderstanding happened, I was confused. I remember thinking, I already explained this. Why is this still unclear? At the time, I assumed the issue was logic. Later, I realized it wasn't. There was a conversation that felt fine when it was happening. No conflict, no raised voice, no obvious tension. We ended the conversation politely. Everything seems aligned. But later, I noticed things drifting. Decisions were not executed as expected. Action did not follow the discussion. Assumptions surfaced. I feel frustrated but also confused. How did we talk away with different understandings? That was the first time I felt there was a gap I could not explain. I started paying attention not to what I said, but to how people react. Sometimes people nodded but looked hesitant. Sometimes they agreed verbally but did not actually. Sometimes they stayed quiet when I expected engagement. I realized something uncomfortable. Words does not land the same way for everyone. Tone matters, timing matters, context matters, emotions matter, and I wasn't always aware of that. My default style was straightforward, direct, efficient, minimum fluff. I thought that was respectful, but not everyone received things the same way. Some people needed reassurance, some need space, some needs time, some needs to feel heard before they could hear. I wasn't wrong, but I wasn't always effective. That distinction took time to sink in. At first, I thought misunderstanding happened because people lack of context. But the more it happened, the clearer it became. These were capable people, smart people, responsible people. The issue was not intelligence, it was interpretations. People filter words through their own experience, their own fears, their own expectation, and I wasn't always accounting for that. I used to treat communication as a purely logical exchange. Information goes in, understanding comes out. But real conversation carry emotion, stress, uncertainty, defensiveness, hope, fear. When those emotions are present, logic alone does not move things. I did not realize how often I skip over that layer. There was one conversation that stayed with me. I thought I was being calm, clear, reasonable, but the other person became quiet. not disengaged, just withdrawn. At the same time, I did not push. I assumed silence means agreement. Later, I realized silence means something else. It means uncertainty, and that misunderstanding matter. Silence isn't always agreement. Sometimes it is confusion. Sometimes it is discomfort. Sometimes it is fear of saying the wrong things. I learned that silence often carry more information than words, but only if you are willing to notice it. I did not set out to be a leader in conversations, but once people looked to me for directions, communication became heavier. What I said carried weight. What I did not say carried weight too. Misalignment did not just slow things down, it affected trust, and that realization stayed with me. There was a point where I realized something. Being clear isn't the same as being understood. And if people misunderstand, it is not always their responsibility to catch up. Sometimes it is mine to slow down. That idea was uncomfortable because it meant communication wasn't just about expression, it was about connection. I began pausing more, not to craft better sentences, but to sense the room. I pay attention to reactions, facial expressions, energy shift. I notice when people disengage, when tension appear, when things fell off, not to fix it immediate, just to notice. One of these hardest things to accept was this. My intention did not guarantee impact. I could mean well and still cause confusion. I could be calm and still create pressure. I could be direct and still make someone shut down. That realization changed how I saw myself, not as wrong, but as incomplete. This episode matters to me because communication shaped many of my leadership moments, not the big speeches, the small conversations, the casual check ins, the quiet misunderstanding, the moments I assumed alignment that wasn't there. Those moments shape trust. There was a phase where my response to misunderstanding was to explain more words, more context, more clarifications. I thought clarity came from adding information, but sometimes the more I explained, the further apart we became. That confused me because in my head, I was doing the responsible things. I remember one conversation where the words were correct, but the distance between us grew. Nothing harsh was said, no conflict, yet something shifted. The conversation ended, but the connection did not feel the same. That is when it hits me. This wasn't a communication issue, it was a connection issue. Listening isn't just waiting to reply. I used to listen with the goal of responding well, of clarifying, of being helpful. But real listening feels different. It feels slower, quieter, less control. It requires space, and space feel uncomfortable to me. Silence makes us uneasy. I feel responsible to feel it, to smooth things over, to keep things moving. But when I resisted that urge, something interesting happened. People spoke, not immediately, not perfectly, but honestly. I started doing something small. After sharing my thoughts, I paused, not strategically, not intentionally dramatic, just pause. And in that pause, others step in. They share concerns, they ask questions, they review assumptions. Things surface that never came out when I filled the space too quickly. I used to think understanding was either there or not, but it is not. Understanding grows, it forms, it settles. Sometimes people need time to process what was said. Sometimes they need safety before they can respond honestly. I wasn't always allowing that. As I became more aware, my leadership changed. Not louder, not more directive, quieter. I spoke less. I listened more. I watched reaction. I asked fewer, better timed questions. Not because I learned a technique, but because I realized connection matter more than speed. There are conversations I still think about, not because they were wrong, but because they could have been gentle. Moments where I moved too fast, moments where I assume alignment, moments where I miss emotional cues. Those memories does not shame me, they remind me. Every conversation carries weight, even casual ones. What you say, how you say it, when you say it, and what you don't say. I did not realize how much my words shaped the space around me, especially once people started looking at me. At some point, the metaphor clicks. An API isn't just about sending data. It is about how the other side receives it. If the contract isn't shared, things break quietly. That is what was happening. Not broken intentions, broken expectations. And once I saw it that way, I could not unsee it. I became more careful with tones, with timing, with assumptions. Not cautious, just aware. I stopped assuming clarity means alignment. I stopped equating silence with agreement. Those small shifts change everything. This episode is personal because communication touches everything: works, friendships, leadership, trust. I saw how often I rely on logic to carry emotional weight and how often that fails. I'm still learning this. I still misread situation. I still speak too quickly sometimes. I still assume understanding. But now I notice it, and noticing creates space. If there's one thing this journey left with me, it is humility. The understanding that being clear does not mean being connected. And leadership, for me, started showing up in how I choose to listen. This wasn't an episode about communicating better. It was about seeing how connection quietly shapes everything we build with others. Sometimes the real works isn't saying more, it is creating enough space for others to speak. Next episode, I want to share a story about a client, one that changed how I work and how I see boundaries. I will see you in episode 6. Bye.